So I'm going to wear it out. Yeah, you're going to hate it. Well, it's okay. So this is the Sunday before Christmas, so we should probably talk about something Christmas related. So I got that covered. I didn't really want to derail our journey of, our goal was to study the 5 sermons of the book of Matthew. And we did that, but I mean, come on, it ends with the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. We got to do that. It's right there. It marches all the way to Matthew 28 where it says, go and make disciples of all the nations. It's too big to miss, right? So we did 26 last week, which was the betrayal of Jesus. And then this week is 27, which is the death of Jesus, the crucifixion. So, we're going to talk about the death and the birth of Jesus. And I'm going to show you how God is an artist. He's an artist, except he doesn't have to paint with brushes. He paints with history. Because he's God. He can write poetry with history. So I'm going to show you the poetry of Jesus' burial and his birth. I'm going to show you. You're going to see it. Hopefully we'll say, "Yay, God!" at the end of that, right? But I was just kind of meditating on, God, what's the big something? I just felt like there was a something brewing, and I think the thing that at the heart level of all these things that are going on is that John 3:16 verse that we read at the very beginning. I mean, so God so loved the world that he gave his only Son that if anyone would believe in him, they won't perish but have everlasting life. And so, incredible love leads to incredible anger, right? So, when people divorce, there used to be enough love to bring them together. And then when there was a divorce, there's this, she's a this and he's a that and they did this, and it's just the emotion of it that used to bring them together is driving them apart. So in God's case, he had such great love for us, children of him, that it drives this passion to get us back. It drove a jealous, fiery passion to get us back. So I want to put that thought out there as we begin reading these things and looking at these things. Jesus, his work came from a deep love and then a deep desire to restore what was lost. When you've been living in perfect peace and perfect love, and then somebody comes along and messes it up, you want to pinch their little heads. And that's part of what the story is. He crushed Satan. Jesus comes and he destroys death. But then part of the war was the deception around who God is. And the loss of love between us and him. And so he had to do tender things instead of hard things to rebuild love and loving relationship. So one of the tender things that God did was Jesus Christ on the cross. Tender thing that God did. The birth of a baby. God did tender things to show that he's worth coming back to. To prove, God demonstrates his love for us while we were still sinners. Christ died for us. So we are going to talk about the birth of Jesus. But we're really also going to be folding that into the death of Jesus. So I think it's providential timing that we're on Matthew 27 today, in my opinion. But we do want to read all of Matthew 27. And we talked about this already. But just get into your story mode. Get into Papa Matt's going to read you a story. And so you got your whatever coziness and drink there. Okay, so we're reading Matthew 27. And so we just picked up where Jesus was taken away to the high priest's house. And while he's there, Peter comes and does his denial. And then this is what happens next. Oh, and they said, we got to crucify this guy because he's claiming to be the Christ, the Son of God, the King of the Jews. Okay? So Matthew 27:1. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate, the governor. Then when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. They said, what is that to us? See to it yourself. And throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed and went and hanged himself. But the chief priest, taking the pieces of silver, said, it's not lawful to put them into the treasury, since it's blood money. So they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said, you have said so. But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, do you not hear how many things they testify against you? But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted. And they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ? For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream. Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, which of the two do you want me to release for you? And they said, Barabbas. Pilate said to them, then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? They said, let him be crucified. And he said, why? What evil has he done? But they shouted all the more, let him be crucified. So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood, see to it yourselves. And all the people answered, his blood be on us and on our children. Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him and twisted together a crown of thorns. They put it on his head and put a reed in his right hand. And kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spit on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes back on him and led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him there. And over his head they put the charge against him, which read, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. So also the chief priests with the scribes and elders mocked him, saying, He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he desires him. For he said, I am the Son of God. And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. Now from the 6th hour there was a darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? And some of the bystanders, hearing it, said, This man is calling Elijah. And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, Wait, let's see whether Elijah will come to save him. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." There were also many women there looking on from a distance, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus, and Pilate ordered it to be given to him. And Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen shroud, and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. The next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember how that impostor said while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore, order the tomb to be made secure until the third day, lest his disciples go and steal him away, and tell the people, 'He has risen from the dead.' And the last fraud will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go, make it as secure as you can." So they went and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. That's always a beautiful story every time, isn't it? Don't want to distract from that story, but we gotta talk about the happy part. Happy part comes not next week, that'll be Ben's talking, but the week after that we'll talk about the happy part, when he gets resurrected by Jesus, or by the Father, who resurrects Jesus. But it's Christmas. It's Christmas. And what I want to do is I want to show you similarities of the birth and death of Jesus. So if you're feeling skeptical, I'm going to blow you away. Okay? Watch this. He was born the King of the Jews. Look at Matthew 2:1. Wise men from the east arrived unexpectedly in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." Above his head they put up the charge in writing against him, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Jesus was born the King of the Jews. And why was he killed? Because he was the King of the Jews. All I'm showing is similarities here, guys. Was that a similarity? Okay? It's going to be pretty cool, though, as we go. Do you know he was wrapped in swaddling clothes on both ends? Right? Luke 2:7, she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for him in the inn. Matthew 27. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in clean, fine linen, and placed it in his new tomb, which he had cut into the rock. And the Bible records these facts. He was anointed with myrrh. So in Matthew 2, after coming into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell to the ground and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they presented him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And in John 19, Nicodemus, who had come to him first by night, also came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds of weight. So they took the body of Jesus, bound it in linen wrappings with the spices, as is the burial custom of the Jews. Here's an interesting one, age appropriate. Jesus was in an unlaid womb and an unlaid tomb. Matthew 1. And Joseph awoke from his sleep and did as angel the Lord commanded him, and he took Mary as his wife, but kept her a virgin until she gave birth to a son, and he called his name Jesus. Matthew 27. So Joseph took the body, wrapped it in clean, fine linen, and placed it in his new tomb, which he had cut into the rock. Jesus came from a womb in which a man had never lain, and he was placed in a tomb in which a man had never lain. He was born in a cave, he was buried in a cave. Okay, now this one you pull from history though, but Matthew 1. Joseph awoke from his sleep, did as the angel told him, took Mary his wife, kept her virgin until he gave birth to a son, called his name Jesus. Oh, that's so funny, I didn't put the right reference. That's what happens when you click a lot. I was meaning to put the one where he goes into the manger. Okay, well guess what Bethlehem's full of? Caves. Okay, you put your animals in caves. Would you rather build an entire structure to put your animals, or would you rather just put them in a cave?
Put them in a cave.
Put them in a cave. So Jesus was born in a cave. And after he was dead, where'd they put him?
In a cave.
In a cave. Okay? There's other ones. He had angels appear with his birth, right before and right after his death. He was born in blood, and he didn't die of old age. He died a bloody death. Some scholars will go on with more, but those are some of the really fun, obvious ones. So we're meant to see those, right? We're meant to see those. We're meant to see that this Jesus who was born to die. That was the intention. That was the intention all along. Jesus' birth led to his death. Ultimately, obviously, resurrection. But we see these poetic connections. Okay, and so as we look at the actual story, though, of this Matthew 27 part, what I want us to pull out is a different lesson related to this idea of his birth and his death. His humility. His humility. His humility. Look on the left there. It was humbling for God to be a baby. And it was humiliating for God to receive public mockery, torture, and death. Okay? The humility of Jesus in his birth and his death. You know, we have this Philippians 2 passage. Have this mind among yourselves, which is our big lesson this morning, right? But have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. If we keep reading, it says he became obedient to the point of death, even the death of a cross. So here, Paul pulls out his birth as a man and his death as two elements of his humility. So the story of Christmas, the story of also Jesus' death, is meant to draw us to his humility. So let's talk about the humiliation of Christ. He was arrested like a criminal, wasn't he? I was in the temple all the time, and now you come and arrest me like a robber. He was stripped and beaten. Is that pretty humiliating? No, that's pretty humiliating. He was sold for the price of a slave. You know? How much is Jesus worth? $1,000. Right, yeah. He was accused of these things falsely. Isn't that humiliating to be accused falsely? And it's frustrating. Right? You don't know me. Okay? He was accused of being a king.
He was a king.
But he was.
He was the king of kings.
But they treated it as a crime. Treated it as a crime. Okay, and then he was chosen to die instead of an actual convicted murderer and insurrectionist. Okay? He was scourged, which means they stripped him of his clothes, whipped him with the whips that had the glass and the shreds of metal in it, and so he didn't have much flesh left on his back. I mean, how do you go on with life with that kind of a deal? Now, in his humility, he allowed himself to go through all these things. But then he also got mocked. So here's another angle of Jesus' humility and humiliation. He was mocked as a king with a crown and a robe. Right? The soldiers come, they dress him up in a robe, crown of thorns. He was mocked as the Son of God who can't come down off a cross. Oh, if you're the Son of God, come down off of that cross. You who are the King of the Jews. You said that the Father loves you, you're God's Son. Let him save you. He was mocked as one who would rebuild the temple once it was destroyed. Destroy this temple, and 3 days later I will rebuild it. But then we're told by the gospel writer, he was referring to his body. His body was the temple. He was mocked for trusting in God. He says that he trusts in God. He was mocked for being the king of the Jews. Mockery is a really powerful way of humiliation, isn't it? It's powerful. and it can start a crowd swing in the wrong direction. Didn't the crowd love Jesus at one time? But then the crowd called for the crucifixion. We saw that in the beginning of Matthew 26. We should find a time to arrest him secretly, lest the crowds start a riot. So they had to turn the crowds. People love a good fall from grace. So, they were mocked by all. Look at all the people that it said. And he uses the word mocked when he records it. Matthew does. Mocked by the chief priests, scribes, and elders. He was mocked by the people who were walking by. And people who were walking by, oh, that's Jesus that did all those miracles, that got all those followers, that did all those things that everyone was talking about. Oh, he's on the cross. I'm going to stop and yell at him. Wow. Mocked by the soldiers. And in 44, he was even mocked by the criminals that are dying beside him. I've got to find it. It's just so. And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. You're bleeding and dying. What are you doing in a mocking tone? There's just this spirit of mockery. Hell was winning. Hell had their hour. And one of the best tools that hell has is their mockery. Did it really work? Yeah. The rejection of Jesus. This is humbling. He was rejected by the Jewish nation. The crowds called for his crucifixion. His blood be on our head and on our children's head. That's heavy. Rejected by the Jewish leaders. Rejected by the Roman leaders. Rejected by his disciples. And they all ran. And then he was rejected by God himself. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken me? We are meant, in reading the story, we're meant to feel the loneliness of Jesus. We're meant to feel the isolation that he experienced. And we're meant to feel the evil that hates one who has done nothing but good. I was with you in the temple all the time. Why did you come arrest me then? Because we didn't have a charge against you. Many people came and offered false testimonies because they couldn't come up with a real one. Finally, you know what they got him on? He's the king of the Jews. And the only reason they could kill him is because the Jews sold themselves to the Romans so that Jesus' claim to be king would go against the Roman government. That's the worst they had on him. But was it true? Yes, it was true. It was true. We were meant to feel the rejection of Jesus. We're meant to feel the humility. And, this is actually not where we're going to take this message, but I wanted to throw these few questions out here so that we can personalize his journey a little bit. Because in watching Jesus go through this, we're meant to ask similar questions as disciples. Can you and I be like Jesus and give no answer when we're being falsely accused? When we're enduring mockery, can we zip it? False accusation, do we have to defend? Or can we stay silent? We're going to have an inner faith, an inner compass that has a confidence that's beyond us in order to survive that with our mouth shut. With our mouth shut. Can you and I let our dignity be stripped away without any self-defense? I don't know about you, but I'm ready to defend myself pretty quick. Can you and I be silent in the middle of a mocking crowd? Not just in front of this judicial courtroom thing, but when everyone's just hurling stuff. You just want to set the record straight. You just want to set the record straight. Can you and I still trust God even when it seems like God himself is very distant? Can we still put our trust in God even when in those moments we maybe feel alone? We could spend more time on this. It was just too good to not talk about. That's actually not where we're going to keep going. But that's how we draw ourselves in. We say, if I put myself in Jesus' position, what would I do? How would it be like for me? Sorry to shift gears. We're going to shift gears, okay? But what about the similarities of a birthday and a funeral? What about the similarities of a birthday and a funeral? You know what it is? Eulogies. Right? At a funeral, what do? You get people up there, and they talk about how great this person was. You know? You want to go to a bad funeral? They're bringing up all the dirt. You go to a normal funeral where people love the person who passed away. They know they're not perfect, but what do they talk about? All the good. They speak well of this person. And you know what you do at birthdays too? I mean, maybe not every birthday, but it's a chance, right, to say, happy birthday to you. I'm glad you're alive. I appreciate you. I'm glad that you were born. I'm glad that you're in my life. I'm honoring you with my presence at your birthday party. A birthday and a funeral have these similarities. So, Christmas is Jesus' birthday. So, interactive portion of our time today. I just want to open it up and let's just speak well of Jesus together. How has Jesus affected our lives, even just this year? I mean, you can go back into history, but 2015, how has Jesus affected your and my life? And let's speak well of Jesus a little bit here. I'm going to go back a little bit in history. I'm glad that Jesus is alive because in 2007, it didn't look good for Matt. It didn't look good for Matt. I had pushed my family away. I pushed my friends away. I was isolated in a really bad way, and God just gently stepped in and corrected my head, corrected my heart. And ever since then, it's just I've had a sense of the humility of tasting how good God is to people that don't deserve how good God is. And so, I'm glad Jesus had a birthday. What about you guys? Why are you glad Jesus had a birthday?
Because I got saved when I was 25. That was the initial time. I'm just so glad every year that he's in my life. I'm so glad.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Steve.
Gives life purpose. Otherwise, we're just going day to day.
Yeah. Yeah.
He gave me the old girl,
The young beautiful one.
and I'm lucky to have her.
Yeah.
And she knows how to make good hamburgers too.
Ooh.
I'm pretty thankful for that.
You bet. You bet.
I'm pretty thankful that we can live here in Oak Lake, and that we prayed so much to Jesus in Germany to find a good place for us, and we found finally this place, and we are just beautiful,
Yeah.
right?
We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
You feel that?
Pastor, it's really grateful that we can have our confidence in Jesus. Blessed is the man whose confidence is in the Lord. It would be like a tree planted by streams of water. That he gives that sense of peace and sturdiness. Because even if we don't know what's going on and what's right or wrong, like he does. So if we lean on him, like he'll show.
Amen.
We're thankful for you.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you. It was worth. Thank you.
Well, it's not worth much coming from me, but
Well, it all adds up.
I'm just thankful for Jesus that because as I grow older, as the storms of life batter you, you just run to him quicker and quicker because you know he's the answer and he's faithful and he never deserts and he always gives hope and he
Yes.
always gives me the word. Nothing's impossible with me. Nothing. Nothing.
That's good.
I'm thankful for him. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. Thankful.
I'm just thankful he doesn't give us what we deserve.
Yeah.
Because every day, for me anyway, I'm doing something I shouldn't, but if he's faithful to forgive you and help you to move ahead.
Well, I'm just thankful that I know he's my rock. And for the peace
Amen.
that he gives me. Because I don't know where I'd be without him. And I'm thankful for Charlie, he gave me Charlie.
Yeah.
And our beautiful family. And they're all saved and they all love him. And that really means a lot to us too.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesus.
And I'm thankful that the Lord gave her peace, especially when I get a little rangy sometimes.
She can get it from God, not yourself. People are the best gift, aren't they? Like giving the gift of a person is the best gift. Any more? Any more? Speaking well of Jesus?
I'm thankful for just recently as we've been going through our discipleship class and just learning about, that deeper relationship, going beyond just being thankful for salvation to actually realizing that we can have that love relationship, which is symbolized by marriage, that we are invited to have that kind of relationship with God. It's amazing and utterly, amazing.
Like he's so full of peace. You know, when we think about people and we want to give them compliments and write things in the birthday card, like, what would I write to Jesus? Like, what would be a quality that has really impacted me this last year? And he's so full of peace. Like, as you were just talking about him being accused there before he died, you know, you feel like that swarm go on in you when you're trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong and what's true and not true when things are being said. Like, Jesus was probably so full of peace in that moment. And I want that. I don't have that yet, but I want to have that part of Jesus' life really come out. He's so full of peace.
And we don't have to defend.
And I think it's because he knows who he is. And he knows what's right and wrong. And he didn't have any sin in his life. So he was, we had to wrestle through our sin too. He didn't have that component. That's nice. But yeah.
And he's always there for us. I'm thinking of my wife too. Our wives are so important to I think.
Yeah, so I mean my thought in this portion of our journey is really, like we're celebrating Jesus this Christmas, not the idea of his birth, but he's been a real person to us.
Yeah.
He's been a real person to us, a really good person who really did die and really did resurrect and really does share himself. And thanks for sharing, everybody that did. So, just bringing it home here. I mean, just look at all the ways that God wanted us to sense Jesus' birth related to his death so that he could give life to the world. And it's a beautiful story. Only God can write stories like this.
And wise men still seek him.
Yeah. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. So we'll just wrap up here with this thought here. Jesus was born to die. Okay, look at Matthew 1:21. She will give birth to a son, and you're to name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. Let's read it again and translate the word Jesus. She will give birth to a son, and you're to name him Yahweh Saves, because he will save his people from their sins. The name of Jesus tells us what he's going to do. Didn't tell you how, just told you what he was going to do. Couldn't tip the devil off too early. So then, how did he do it? We saw it in Matthew 26. Going a little further, he fell face down and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." So this cup is explained in Isaiah. What's in the cup? What's in the cup that Jesus didn't want to drink? The wrath of God for sinners. The wrath of God for sinners. Jesus did not want to drink that cup. Tough, strong Jesus didn't want to drink that cup. But it wasn't as he willed. This is why he came. His hour was for this. How many times did he say that? My hour is not yet. The reason for which I came is not yet. So who drinks the cup? Jesus drinks the cup. But if I don't put my faith in him, who drinks the cup? I'll either drink my own cup, or Jesus drinks the cup for me. And so that's how he saves. That's how he saves this holiday season. I might have started a fire, but that's what I put in the paper for the...
I knew that answer because I read that.
That's what I put in the paper for the Oak Lake and Burden Empire fans. They wanted a little piece. I don't know, it seemed appropriate. So, let's just talk to God a little bit and we're all done here. So God, thank you for this story. Thank you for this message. Thank you for Jesus. We are very grateful. And it's good to be grateful. It's good to acknowledge your goodness, and because it keeps building faith for the next time that we need goodness. It builds our confidence that you are the person to go back to. And your actual birth, which history has proven, and your actual death, which history has proven, and your actual resurrection, which history has proven, but people don't want to look at it, is all there to build a confidence to our mortal natural eyes that the unseen God is real and loves us and can be leaned on by faith. So, God, we want to lean on you more. We want to lean on you more. We want to trust ourselves less. And, you know, it's your grace that holds our families together. You know, it's your grace is the only thing that makes us have happy Christmases. It's not our anything. And then, God, you shared with us this theme of the humility of Christ, and then that verse that says we must have this attitude in ourselves. And God, look, I don't know how to conjure up humility within myself. Then that's the joke, while I get proud about how humble I am. That's true. Unless a humility that comes from Jesus can be imparted to me, it doesn't work. So I guess that's the gift that we ask that you would give us this Christmas season. Give us the gift of humility. Give us the gift of humility. Where if we're enduring humiliation, we have the confidence in our Father that he will vindicate us. Jesus was vindicated on his death. Jesus' kingship was vindicated before the mockers. God backed up Jesus' obedience and his silence. God proved. God came to war on behalf of his servant that was enduring mockery, humiliation. You'll come to our aid as well. So get it out of us, God, that self-defense and that self-righteousness. And get it out of us. It's not from Christ. It's from earth. It's not wisdom. Humility is the wisdom of God. Silence. A properly timed silence is the wisdom of God. God, that would be a great gift to give us this year. So thank you, God, for letting us meditate on these things. Thanks for letting us gather as a family in public and open and advertised in the paper. And We're grateful for our freedoms we have in this country. Please sustain them. And so, Lord, thank you for our chance to have a Christmas. So we love you. In Jesus' name. Amen.